Hey guys, Sarah here from Yarn Lab Canada, and today I just have a quick how-to to show you the way that I steam block my acrylic projects. So let's take a look at how I do that process. So this is a shawl that I knit using Red Heart Boutique Unforgetable, and it's a 100% acrylic yarn. And this is the pattern from the ball band. I believe it's called the Lafayette Shawl. I'll include the information for this pattern in the description below. And you can see that it's a stockinette stitch, primarily shawl, with rows of a garter eyelet lace. And I've already steam blocked this side of the shawl, and I haven't blocked yet this side of the shawl. And when you're working with stockinette, it of course is a unbalanced stitch, and so it wants to curl quite a bit. So you can see in the section that is unblocked, there's a lot of valleys and curling in between the eyelet lace ridges, and in particular the border of the shawl really wants to stay curled up. On the side that I've steam blocked, you have the shawl hanging the way that you would want it to. So, in order to go ahead and steam block my shawl, all that you are going to want are a set of blocking mats, and these are just those foam floor tiles. A couple of websites like Knit Picks sell blocking mats, but it's actually cheaper just to go to Walmart and buy a set of the foam floor tiles. They're like the puzzle piece floor tiles. You can just pick them up at Walmart or Home Depot. A lot of places carry them. And then you're going to need some pins and a clothing steamer. So I just have a relatively inexpensive, I think it was like 35 bucks, clothing steamer that does a high heat setting. You can also do this using an iron, where you put the iron on a full steam setting and sort of hover the iron over top of your fabric, but you run the risk of touching your fabric by accident and melting it. So I do recommend that you do it with a clothing steamer, and then you don't run into any issues with actually melting your acrylic. So I'm going to set my camera on my tripod and show you the process. Again, you can also use, you can also buy proper blocking pins, but I'm just using straight pins from like the sewing section at your local craft store or Walmart or whatever. So straight pins work just as fine. If you care at getting a particularly perfectly straight border, they also sell blocking wires that you can weave in to your garment to get a perfectly straight border, as pins are going to potentially cause a little bit of pins will cause a little bit of an uneven border, but I'm not too concerned about that, and I just don't have any blocking wires to do it with. So what you want to do is pin out the garment to the final dimensions that you want. And I just pin straight through my garment and into my blocking mat. And I usually sort of pull out the edges to the dimensions that I want, and then I'll pull out the corners to the dimensions that I want, and then I'll tug down this edge and pin it out straight. The more pins that you use, the straighter your final edge will be. The fewer pins that you use, the more scalloping you'll get on the straight edge of your shawl. So keep that in mind. And if you want to be a perfectionist about it, consider investing in blocking wires. I'm just spacing my pins about 2 to 3 inches apart. And basically whatever shape you pin your garment down to is going to be the final dimensions of the project. So I have it all pinned out. I'm not super concerned about that final corner being a little bit curly, because I'm okay with the way that that's going to look. And I'm just going to put a couple pins on the other half of the shawl to make sure that the point down here comes to a good V. Alright, oops. So you can see that I have that point coming kind of to a V down here. The other side's already been blocked. With acrylic, it is a one-shot blocking process because you're essentially melting the fibers ever so slightly to let them sort of take on a final shape. So with wool projects, you can always wash them and reblock them out, but with acrylic, it is a one-hit wonder, if you will. So I'm just going to plug in my steamer and then I will show you how I block it. Alright, so I do have on my steamer an option for high heat and low heat, and I am using the high heat setting. And you're just going to want to steam your fabric, keeping the steamer about an inch off of the surface of the fabric. Because it is steam and it's a controlled temperature, you shouldn't have any issues with melting your fabric, but you wouldn't want to stay in one spot not moving for very long. So think of it the way that you are when you're like blow drying your hair or something, where you want to kind of keep things moving. Yeah, so I just turn my steamer on and then I start sort of just hovering the steamer back and forth over the surface of the fabric. And you'll actually see the stitches sort of spread out underneath the heat. And kind of relax a little bit. And some people will call this heat killing your acrylic, because you are essentially melting the acrylic ever so slightly when you do this. Like I said, you could do it with an iron and float the iron above the surface of your fabric, but if you did touch the metal of the iron to the fabric, you're going to have a burnt and melted spot. So that's why steaming is just a little bit safer. You're not likely to damage the garment. And I just want to make sure that I go over that bottom edge, since that is where most of the curling is happening. And that's it. So I'll plug my steamer. And the great thing about steam blocking versus wet blocking is you can unpin it right away. So you don't have to wait like overnight until your garment dries. It's good to go right away. And immediately as I take the pins out of this bottom section, you can see that that curling issue has been solved by the blocking. Whereas this top corner where I haven't really blocked it still has a bit of that curl. There you go. You can see that we've alleviated all of the curling and the fabric drapes and hangs the way that we want to now. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my shawl and show you the finished project. So now I've got the finished project on and I really like the shawl. If you saw my last podcast video where I showed off this finished knitting project, I put it on and sort of showed you that it was coming to a really sharp point because these ends were rolling up and it was essentially hanging like this at the bottom. And now that it's been blocked, it hangs really quite nicely. You don't have any issues, I find, with the acrylic getting glossy or feeling melted or charred. And that could happen if you were to do it with too high of a heat or to burn your acrylic with an iron or something. So overall, steam blocking, it works wonders on acrylic projects. If you have acrylic garments that need blocking, it works great. If you have acrylic Afghan squares that need to be stretched out to size, you'll get it to hold the edges straighter and stretch out to size a little bit better. You can open up lace this way. Overall, you know, a $35 clothing steamer might be the best investment you make if you're going to be knitting a lot with acrylic. That's all for now, and happy knitting!